As we covered earlier, secondary school structures do not generally support high-quality relationships. With teacher loads of 150 plus students, limited amounts of time to engage, no explicit links between caring adults, the reasons go on and on. Yet we know that serving students well requires structures that support and encourage each student to be known. Arguably, the most important structures supporting learning are those that support healthy relationships between adults and kids. Take a minute to reflect on your school structures, including the practices and processes you use to ensure students are known. Do students and staff feel a sense of belonging? Do they feel connected? The point of this module is to think critically about your current structures and to build a plan for improvement if you're not able to answer with an affirming yes to each of these questions. At Inflection, we categorize school efforts in terms of little things, key moves, and big plays. Little things are things you could have done yesterday and you can do tomorrow. Key moves are things that would take you 3 to 6 months to fully implement. Big plays would take 6 to 18 months to fully implement. This module will discuss what schools can do to support healthy relationships using these 3 categories. In your school right now, there are little things teachers already do intentionally to support quality relationships. Take part of a day and simply walk into the classroom of the teachers with the highest level of student engagement and notice the little things they do. Take note of how they set up their room, how they open the class period, how they structure learning, how they solicit responses from students. The experts on building quality relationships using little things are already in your school, and we encourage you to generate a list of exemplar little things you see at your own site. As you generate your list, look for patterns and similarities in the rituals and routines that support relationships. Then work with your school community to incorporate shared rituals and routines, simply by sharing the little things that are already effective across the school. In our work with schools, we found that schools with high levels of belonging, connection, and engagement do a handful of these little things every period, every day. Relationships are a priority of quality instructional design. Teachers can use instructional practices that require students to engage with each other and with the teacher. Little things like employing dyads and triads as a regular routine within the course of instruction are a simple, powerful strategy. Using approaches that allow students to work together to come to understandings or to complete tasks and projects collectively are more the norm than the exception in classes with high student engagement. These are examples of how to make relationships an instructional priority. Social emotional learning, and specifically social awareness and relationship skills, are explicit student outcomes that every staff member should be expected to support at the learning level because it is a part of the school's holistic vision for readiness. This assumes the school has a shared understanding of social emotional learning and what is meant by social awareness and relationship skills. It also assumes specific practices, rituals, and routines that are employed across all classrooms. Culturally responsive and inclusive practices are important and positively affect all students. They are critical to ensure historically underserved student groups feel a sense of belonging, connection, and are inspired and motivated to engage in learning. In schools where relationships are strong and positive, modeling is evident. Staff treat students, staff, and families with respect and demonstrate openly how to communicate and resolve issues in positive and productive ways. Modeling is an expectation for administrators, staff, older students, and key family community members. We cannot underscore how powerful modeling is. It is a very little thing that could have been done yesterday and you can do tomorrow. These 4 strategies, instructional priority, incorporating social emotional learning as a valued outcome, culturally responsive practices, and modeling, all represent little things and key moves that can help create and sustain quality relationships at school. What are the things your school does well? What are things that have been taken up by the collective and are things you see every period, every day? Now we'd like to continue our discussion with key moves and big plays. We are confident you already employ some of the examples provided and would encourage you to think about your level of effectiveness as we go. This slide has a list of potential key moves or big plays a school can make, and we'll go into depth with a couple of examples. We'll start by saying that there is no single best school schedule. If there were, all schools would be using it. With that said, we do believe block scheduling is better for fostering and nurturing relationships for both teacher to student as well as student to student relationships. In terms of teacher to student relationships, block schedules can afford smaller loads. For example, a trimester schedule has teachers teaching 4 classes with a total student load of approximately 120 students. Compare that to a traditional 2x7 semester schedule, where teachers often teach 6 classes with a total student load of approximately 180 students. Another way to consider relationships is the amount of time per class per student. In a traditional 2x7 semester schedule, teachers often have 1.8 minutes per student per class period. In a 4x4 block, teachers have approximately 3 minutes per student per class. Obviously, there are fewer block sessions per year. Bottom line, block schedules offer larger chunks of time per class than the traditional 2x7 schedule. In terms of student-to-student relationships, block schedules better support instructional practices that engage students with each other through project-based learning, cooperative learning practices, and other sustained group work. Students are more likely to be working together collaboratively on complex tasks in block schedules. The bottom line is that the school schedule matters, and there is no single schedule that is inherently better than another. The best schedule is the one that best reflects who you are and best supports what you are trying to get done for all students. However, when it comes to relationship building, relationships are best supported in some form of block schedule, assuming the practices teachers and staff engage are focused on relational strategies. How well does your schedule support quality relationships? Making high schools more personalized has been a focus for many years. Efforts such as the small school movement involved a number of structural approaches to making larger schools feel smaller and, in essence, to support relationships where students are known by more than their name and face. At Westview High School in Beaverton, Oregon, the school administration took a school with 2,700 students and approximately 150 staff and created 3 distinct houses with 900 students each. As part of this effort, they assigned an administrator, 2 counselors, 2 to 3 special educators, and approximately 50 teachers to each house. Students were scheduled into their core classes, including PE and health, within their house, while they attended elective classes outside of their house. Within this house structure, Westview incorporated teaming structures. Specifically, all 9th and 10th graders were on teams within their house. These teams included 90 students and 2 teachers, English and Social Studies, shared across 3 class periods. The group of 90 students were together as 9th graders and stayed together as 10th graders. The classroom teachers, house administrator, house counselors, and special educators had built-in collaboration every week as part of their schedule. This was accomplished by prioritizing shared collaboration time as part of the 9th and 10th grade teachers' schedules. Westview used this structure to focus on high-quality relationships at the 9th and 10th grade level and to ensure students received the support and resources they needed when and how they needed them to be successful. Westview's efforts generated results. The discipline rates, attendance rates, and participation in advanced programs improved for all students and improved most significantly for Black, Latinx, and low-income students. During the weekly meetings at Westview, staff used protocols similar to the one on the screen. Decisions at the student level were driven by teachers and staff closest to the students who knew them by their story. Whether teaming at the instructional level or through other types of teams like MTSS, RTI, or student success teams, structured protocols that incorporate a diverse set of information about the individual student is critical in making quality decisions. Very few schools we've worked with have these types of structured protocols. In terms of big plays, one common structural approach is a schools within a school model, such as a career pathways program. Valley High School in the Santa Ana Unified School District in California saw a significant increase in on-time graduation rates after moving their entire school to a wall-to-wall career pathway model. At Valley, the decision to move to a career pathway model was in part based on the value the community placed on students being connected, the potential for a career pathway structure to support quality relationships between students and staff, and the power in having staff work together with a smaller, specific group of students. Another example of a big play that supports students being known are advisory models. Advisory models generally place between 20 to 25 students together with a staff member and have those students and staff stay together for all 4 years. The most effective advisory models provide direct support for specific skills such as social-emotional learning and student well-being that are reinforced explicitly every period, every day through the student's natural coursework. Often, advisory models are not perceived as being effective because the focus of the advisory does not explicitly connect to the rest of the student's day. Another key move worth considering is a focus on the 9th grade transition year. North Eugene High School in Eugene, Oregon saw a 10% increase in its graduation rate, due in part to their efforts to nurture quality relationships using this approach. They created 9th grade success teams that worked directly with a 9th grade transition specialist and a 9th grade counselor. The transition specialist focused on students who were identified as needing additional support based on their middle school experience and 9th graders who struggled during their first 9 weeks of the school year. The counselor worked with the 9th grade teachers to create classroom environments that support quality relationships between students, as well as between students and staff. Finally, specific programs like restorative practices, PBIS, AVID, etc., either directly or indirectly support quality relationships because all of these examples have relational components. Depending on the program, these can be key moves and/or big plays. Serving all kids well requires quality relationships. This is an inherent value found in the identity of schools that are getting it done for each and every student. If you believe in it, you should be able to articulate the specific structures you use to support it. You should be able to identify for your staff, students, families, and communities how your school is set up to maximize relationships. Now take a minute to reflect and think about your own school. What are your structures to build relationships with students, and how well are they working? How do you know how well they're working? Do your students feel a sense of belonging, connection, and engagement to the school? These are the questions that need to be asked, answered, and addressed.